this way in Oakland too, so we're hanging in there. But yeah, thanks for joining me. I know we've been kind of chatting back and forth on the Clean Your Alumni Slack channel, and really just wanted to spend some time today and understand, your journey in tech, how you've landed roles, how you've developed your career in software engineering, becoming a team lead when we work together and helping build the hiring process. So again, just wanted to thank you for your time up front and maybe pass it over to you for some tidbits around who you are, what you do and how you got into tech.
Sure. So, my name is Laura, obviously, but no, so I've worked in web development since 2010. I studied in web development, and after a sandwich course, I decided to move from France to Canada. So, first process of getting me hired by a Canadian company was quite
Mm-hmm.
interesting. I started as Drupal developer, then WordPress developer, and decided to, take the big jump into the startup world, becoming a React developer, and then
Right.
officially front-end engineer, and from front-end engineer, tech lead, and finally manager 4 years ago, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty classic journey, I would say, but not classic companies. I mean, I've worked in web agencies, startups, now big public companies. So I guess all kind of experiences, and none of them is similar.
Wonderful. You mentioned Drupal. I actually, man, this is like 2013, 10 years ago. I tried to learn Drupal to build out a social media company using Python and Drupal. And wait, is Python and Drupal, or is it PHP and Drupal? One or the other. And I just never got around to it. But you mentioned Drupal. I feel like, man, it took me back down memory lane for a bit. So can we talk
Yeah.
about that real quick and why that was useful back then and why you transitioned to WordPress and now React?
Yeah. So Drupal makes me feel old, as you mentioned. I mean, um, no fancy these days. PHP, yes. It was just the software that my company was using at the time to
Mm-hmm.
manage their content. So it was a company. Actually, it was a company to try to replicate the kind of monsters and LinkedIn behavior. So it was
Mm-hmm.
helping people to do hiring. It was a hiring platform. It's still alive, which is good news for them.
Right.
It's specifically dedicated for France. And I remember back then we were competing, being number one or number two with Monster.com. So
Mm-hmm.
one month or another, we would be the first or second. And they would like to provide a service to their specific customer, bigger customer, to have their own tiny replicate of that platform on their side with their own
Mm-hmm.
branding. And to manage that content and branding, we would use Drupal. And that's pretty much it, how it happened. So it would allow, our company to have blog posts and not just only, okay, this is the platform with the list of jobs. They could do,
Mm-hmm.
content and try to entertain people and follow up like what was happening. So big brands would just hire this company and provide their own micro service for that. Um, so it was back in France and was content management in PHP. And when I was looking for working in Canada, Drupal is a big machine, was pretty heavy, but the most common is WordPress. So the switch from Drupal to WordPress wasn't that big of a stretch, just learning a new CMS, which is not that
Mm-hmm.
different. It's just PHP, and it just allowed me to, reach more companies. And I've learned WordPress at that company. It was a web agency. We were doing like basically very classic website just for content, no e-commerce, no marketing. So yeah, WordPress was suiting their needs pretty decently.
Good to hear. And then, so I guess two questions here. For folks that are listening and curious about agencies, what was that style of work like? How did you get into agency? Was there a specific hiring process or was it referral? Let's talk about that for a second.
Sure, and it was a very tiny one, I have to say. We were 16, so between the designers, we had four different owners, so it was different group of people, HR, everybody was it's total of 16, and
16?
that,
Wow.
yeah, and this agency, we were also providing a video service, so we would be available to shoot really produce like video content, and it was actually how it came to life was really someone doing web platform who met a duo of two men who were doing videos, and he was like, providing the video to your customers is fine, but it would be even more powerful if they could put it somewhere. And you have to
Mm.
remember that like 12 years ago, right? So,
Right.
in terms of broadcasting content, video content, it was not the same as TikTok and YouTube are today. So, like guiding people to, have them have a nice platform, nice website, and uploading the videos was really needed. And the quality of those video was awesome. So, they just merged together and they decided to provide an entire thing, plus someone else joined to do advise people on their um, social content strategy. So it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of a, all included as you want to have some presence online, we're there. And
Mm-hmm.
so tiny web agency because you probably have two designers, two developers, two people responsible for, or three people responsible for the video, and then two product manager, then it's all right. Basically, it's
Mm-hmm.
the
That's
entire
it.
company. So getting hired there, casual strategy. I went and I brought on all the Quebec because I was targeting Quebec at the time. So
Mm-hmm.
Quebec dedicated for IT websites, job posting or job listing, and I found out this one. I never asked how many people they interviewed, but I'm assuming not that many. Reality is the salary was very low.
Mm-hmm.
It's the difficulty of a tiny family-ish web agency. You
Right.
cannot offer incredible amount of money. The target is to survive for against bigger agencies. Um, but you know what? They trusted me, and they trusted me. They helped me get my visa, and for me, it was more than any kind of salary. So I was lucky, I have to say,
Mm-hmm.
because in these 16, well, 15 people at the time, 15 people, among them there were one French guy, and he went through the same, journey as immigration papers as I did, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he convinced the owner to say, "Hey, let's give her a chance." Um,
Wow.
I said yes to work remotely from France to Canadian time zone, like Eastern time zone. Actually, in the meantime, I was receiving my visa papers, work paper, and yeah, actually the work paper were pretty easy, so I
Mm-hmm.
handled them. Wasn't that quick. I worked remotely for two months, but then yeah, one day I received my letter, and 2 days after I was in office, so it was
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
Got on the flight and was in the office in Quebec. Awesome.
Yeah.
Side note, I just visited Canada for the first time. I went to Toronto,
Oh, nice.
and it was 42 degrees, but it didn't feel too bad. I'm used to the cold. I don't think there was. Take it back. There was a little bit of chill at 42 degrees. Like, wow, this is definitely Canadian cold. But I just want to throw that out there because I definitely want to visit other places like Kelowna and Quebec as well. So keeping that in mind for future travels. So
Sure.
sounds like web agencies very tight knit, and I don't mean to like overuse the cliche many hats, but it sounds like lots of work, lots of introductions to different clients with different industries,
Hmm.
using similar tools. So would you say that working at that specific agency allowed you to see more technologies, maybe be a part of the project at a larger scale, or was it very much hired you for specifically Drupal WordPress and then from there scaled up?
Um, at some point, I would say the ambitions of that web agency wasn't fitting mine. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because as for profit and just being alive, you need at some point to ship, right? So we were taking small medium-sized project all the time. uh, the specificity of this agency was to create custom templates. So most agencies would just buy a template, apply it to you, help you tweak the website, and just go, right, and do the maintenance for you.
Mm-hmm.
While we were creating custom designs, and those designs were good enough that some of those websites those
Right.
days they are still alive and they haven't changed by a pixel. So
Wow.
um, yeah, some of them, not all of them, but some of them. So I think it was the value here, but still it was small, tiny websites, just informative ones. The difference of working in a very tiny web agency, I guess, is first the vibe. You have to say, like, everybody, them very personally.
Mm-hmm.
It's close. It was, really warm vibe,
Right.
especially for
Right.
someone in a new country. I mean, I didn't know anybody when I moved in Canada, so it was definitely like super great. I'm still in touch with some of them. I see them regularly because
Wow.
it's this vibe of you do a real Christmas dinner together and you meet everybody's partner, and so that's the good part. As I had to convert the design pixel by pixel, set up the environment, the backend environment, do the deployment myself, and so on. So,
Hmm.
of course, you're doing the 0 to 100% project. We are not enough developers to be picky in terms of you do that part, I do the other one. So
Right.
that's the nice part. But I've been there for 2 years, 2 full years, and around a year and a half, I warned them. I was like, "It's nice, I love you all, but as a developer,
Right.
it's a bit boring. It's still
Mm-hmm.
WordPress, PHP, very basic." And I was like, "This is a bit boring. So hopefully, we can attract bigger contracts or something new to challenge everybody, challenge our designers, challenge everybody in the company." Um, and I've waited 6 months, and after the 6 months, it was clear that we would just continue to take the same old-fashioned
Right.
contract. So I told them I was sad, but I told them I would make my move and find something as challenging in terms of coding skills, and that's how I started from scratch again and said JavaScript, React, and let's start over, right?
Yeah. I was actually just going to ask that question next. So, how did you teach yourself? How long did it take? And what do you find interesting about the technology in JavaScript and React?
How long? How long? I would say I'm still learning.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
No, but um, to the good news was I back in those days we were not using as many libraries, front-end libraries as we are now. So I was still very skilled, and I guess if you put me in front of someone to really build without any library, a component library to build up a UX, I'm still good at it, right? This hasn't changed. So that part was kind
Mm-hmm.
of checked already. Learning React, I found it painful. As many have just went on the React documentation.
Mm-hmm.
Then I figured it was maybe better to just learn the basics of JavaScript before launching, like throwing myself in on React. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I took my time. It was the real first time I wasn't in a rush of finding a job. I had a job and I wanted to be picky about which
Mm-hmm.
new job I would like to do. And I remember clearly that I had two jobs who actually answered me, like two different positions. One was
Mm-hmm.
for React though, but in a big, big agency. Like we are talking about plus 200, plus 300 web agency.
Wow.
Um, and then the other one was a tiny startup that healthcare providing an app for nurses and practitioners. And I interviewed in both. Um, the startup one, I called them early on and they told me we are looking for director of design and then we're going to call you back. and it told me it would take around a month and a half. So a month and a half after I pinged them, I was like, "Oh, by the way, have you found your director of design?" And they said, "Yeah, thank
I
you,
love it.
thank you for reaching out. And do you want to interview? Now that we have enough people to interview and find a developer." And I interviewed them really the same day almost,
Wow.
and yeah, so I had an offer from both. Um, Salary increase was kind of, you're on, product driven company, and it's not a web agency. Well, and the other web agency was just like so big that they would definitely pay higher. I think, if I recall, it was a 25% salary increase. So
Mm,
for me, it was just like super big success, right? I was like, oh my God, this is just
right.
crazy. So I did buy the product. The product like literally convinced me. I was like, okay, maybe on the other side, I'll follow big project in a web agency that might last 6 months, a year or so. But on the other side, I'm just fully committed to a product that I'll see grow, I'll see evolve. So I picked that up, and that's how I ended up in healthcare. And you know what?
Hmm.
At some point, that company got, like 6 months after I joined, that company got acquired, and that's how we worked
Hmm.
together.
That's what we
uh,
got.
so yeah,
What a great story. I'd like the specific snippet where you said you followed back up in a month and a half, probably put a reminder on your calendar, said, hey, it's been 45 days. Can we chat? And I think what often gets missed is in small companies like that, folks are not necessarily managing the hiring pipeline with a dedicated person, right? So circling back oftentimes will get you that interview and also show proactiveness and initiative,
yeah,
which obviously was shared across the interviewing panel as they interview you, like, hey, this person, individual Laura, followed up with us. And that's just a sign of, great teamwork. So I'm just assuming that helped with the interviewing process, but congrats on that. I mean, there was two opportunities, drastically different scope of work, significant different pay, but you decided to go with the company and attach yourself to the product, which I think a lot of folks do. When we met, the reason I joined Commure was I fell in love with the problem we were trying to solve, and
yeah,
and there was also a pay increase and position increase, so on and so forth. But I wouldn't have left, Crunchyroll where I was at streaming media unless I knew the product was going to, impact millions of people. So I guess
yeah.
on that note, being a manager at Commure now in health tech, how did you take your interviewing process to hopefully or try to embed some practices into your new position as a manager at Commure? Were there things that you thought would suit well for the candidate? Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah. Well, by the way, I'm not working at Commune anymore, right? But yeah, uh, and you're right, because when I reached out again, I think the team was 9. So of course, it was the CEO and CTO who would take care of the interview process, right?
Right.
So of course, you make a difference by asking. But I kept remembering that I liked that company, and even if they were offering less than the big web agency, I was like, I really like it. So hopefully, I got it. And
Right.
so now as I'm a manager, as good practices, well, as I want people to have a chance. That's my main
Mm.
intake. I mean, I'm hiring manager, so meaning I have the last call at the end of the day. It's my decision to make
Hmm.
an offer or not make an offer. We do have standardized process for hiring. They are meeting a bunch of candidates and so, but my best practice first is to spare time on my team. Meaning
Hmm.
I do so whoever recruiter I'm working with, they do a first grooming, but I'm the first one the candidate meets, right? So if the candidate doesn't pass me, I don't want them to see anybody, because time is precious is in any company, and I don't want my engineers to
Hmm.
suffer from candidate I know from scratch that they won't make it. So I want to spare
Hmm.
everybody's time, the candidate, my engineers, everybody, right? It's very precious. I don't want to create any frustration.
Hmm.
Making a candidate go through almost, if not all, the process creates hope, which can be
Right.
very hard to receive as frustration, and being upset about not having a job. So yeah, I want to be as transparent as possible. I want to make them feel good during the interview. I usually my first call is really more. Now I'm starting now with the cultural check. I know sometimes the company does that the last, right? There's kind of a last chat to see if it would fit, and we kind of track the culture among all various interviewers. But I really want to do a first culture check, interview one, as if it's not working from very root basics of communication and
Right.
curiosity, I'm like, no, right? It won't work. So yeah, driving this in a sense of efficiency for everybody, I think is the best way to be transparent and to drive good value as what the company wants.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I've been coaching a few engineers as of late, and I'm sharing with them like, hey, just tell your story, tell it the best you can. What you've done, what you're looking to do, and ask a lot of interesting questions about the roadmap, the technology, the team size, specific challenges, right? Because you want to know what you're getting into, whether good, bad, in between. And it has to be exciting enough, for both parties to move forward. So, with that specific note, what are your, where are you currently at? Are you looking for a role? Are you hiring? Anything you'd like to share on those two types of those two ends?
Yeah, well, I think it would be foolish to say you're never looking for a new role, whatever. I mean, I'm always listening if someone has something crazy to offer. But currently,
I love it.
currently, I really love my team. I'm really happy at what I'm doing. So, no, I'm not actively looking for a job. But it would be foolish to say if you have something crazy to tell me about that will, I don't know, change the life of thousands of people and not to tell me about it. I'm like, oh, don't do, right? I mean,
Right,
please.
right.
Other than that, I'm working currently at Okta. We are hiring, and if anybody wants to join us, I'll be very happy to explain more about it. There's many different kind of roles. Good company if you want to solve the identity security problems and you being you on the internet and making sure we provide secure
Right.
technology. And so yeah, always for looking for curious people who are interested in and who wants to make just good product.
Wonderful. So we'll direct the folks to Okta. I had no idea, so I have to make sure that I go to your LinkedIn page and give some kudos. A friend of mine named Ben works at Okta as well. Huge organization. Probably don't know him, but I'll make the introduction via LinkedIn so you all can kind of
Definitely.
chat and do some coffee and stuff like that. So thank you, Laura. Any last tips for job seekers before we part ways?
Um, if you're a candidate, do your duties. Don't spam. I know it's a shame because some recruiters are spamming candidates, but don't spam. Make your duty. Try to find an angle of something that you like in the company and ask questions about that. It's gonna make 100% time the difference, especially if you're a new grad or out of school or with few experience. Most hiring manager, they don't care at that point if you know not over Java or whatever, but if you look passionate, they'll hear you and they'll listen. So please
Well,
do your duty and find out about the company you're asking about.
thank you for sharing that. I think the passion, the inquisitiveness, the curiosity, and just the general love for the work will set you far above than any technology you're pitching yourself with. So,
Definitely.
yeah, very much appreciated. We'll definitely have to have a second conversation in the spring and see how things are going. And thanks again for your time, and we'll catch you on the other side.
Awesome. Thank you for your time too and the invite. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Good seeing you again.
Bye.